My wife didn't cheat on me, but she spent 7 years building a life that never existed. My name is Arthur, and until 3 weeks ago, I thought I was the luckiest man in Seattle. I thought I was married to a genius. My wife, Rebecca, was the vice president of marketing for a boutique tech startup that had recently gone public. We lived in a beautiful 4-bedroom house overlooking the Puget Sound. We drove Teslas. We took vacations to Cabo in the Amalfi Coast twice a year. I worked as a freelance graphic designer, a job I loved because it gave me freedom. But Rebecca was the breadwinner. She was the powerhouse. Every morning, I would watch her put on her power suit, grab her leather briefcase, and kiss me goodbye. She would tell me about her stressful meetings, her demanding clients, and the incompetent interns she had to manage. I was her rock. I would cook dinner for her when she came home late. I would massage her shoulders while she complained about the CEO. I admired her work ethic more than anything else in the world. We were planning to adopt a child next year. We had even set up a nursery, painted in soft yellow, filled with expensive toys. But the nursery, the house, the cars, and the vacations were all phantoms. The house of cards collapsed on a rainy Tuesday morning. I was home alone, working on a logo design for a client. The doorbell rang, which was unusual for that time of day. I opened the door to find a sheriff's deputy standing on my porch. He looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. He asked me if I was Arthur Miller. I said yes, feeling a sudden spike of anxiety, assuming something had happened to Rebecca. He handed me a thick stack of papers stapled together. It wasn't an accident report. It was an eviction notice. And not just an eviction notice, it was a foreclosure judgment stating that the house was being seized by the bank. I laughed at him. I genuinely laughed because I thought it was a clerical error. I told him, "Officer, there must be a mistake. My wife pays the mortgage automatically every month. We are ahead on payments." He looked at me with pity in his eyes, and that look scared me more than the papers. He told me that no payments had been made on the mortgage for 14 months. 14 months! He told me that we had ignored over 50 warning letters sent to this address. I told him that was impossible because I get the mail every day. Then I remembered something. I remembered that Rebecca insisted on getting the mail. She had a routine. She would stop at the mailbox at the end of the driveway before pulling into the garage. She said it was her way of decompressing before entering the house. I stood there on the porch, holding the order to vacate in 72 hours as the deputy walked away. I went inside and called Rebecca. It went straight to voicemail. I called her office, the main line of the tech startup she had worked at for 7 years. The receptionist answered, chirpy and bright. I asked to speak to Rebecca Miller, the VP of marketing. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. The receptionist said, "I'm sorry, sir. We don't have anyone by that name here." I felt the blood drain from my face. I said, "Don't be ridiculous. She has been the VP there since 2017. She has a corner office on the 14th floor. The receptionist paused and then said, "Sir, the 14th floor is the server room. There are no offices there." I hung up the phone. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped the device on the kitchen counter. I ran to her home office, a room she usually kept locked because of confidential client data. I kicked the door open. I expected to see files, contracts, marketing plans. Instead, I saw a room filled with unopened envelopes. Thousands of them. They were stacked in towers on the desk, on the floor, on the chair. They were from banks, from credit card companies, from loan sharks, from the IRS. I started ripping them open, one by one, frantic like a madman. The truth started to form a picture that was so horrifying, I had to sit on the floor to keep from fainting. Rebecca didn't have a job. She hadn't had a job in 6 years. She had been fired from that startup 6 years ago for embezzlement, a small amount which they didn't prosecute her for, but they let her go. She never told me. Instead, she had spent the last 6 years pretending to go to work. Every morning she dressed up, drove to a coffee shop or a library, and sat there for 8 hours watching Netflix on her iPad. But how did we pay for the house? How did we pay for the Teslas? How did we pay for the trips to Italy? She had been taking out loans in my name.
She had forged my signature on second and third mortgages. She had opened 12 credit cards using my social security number. She had liquidated my 401k without me knowing. But the most twisted part was my own job. I mentioned I was a freelance graphic designer. For the last 3 years, my biggest client was a company called Apex Solutions. They paid me a generous retainer every month. I found a binder on her desk labeled Apex. I opened it. There were no clients. Apex Solutions was a shell company Rebecca created. She was paying me my own stolen money to design logos that were never used. She created fake email addresses to give me feedback on my work. She critiqued my designs. She told me to make the font bigger or change the color palette, playing the role of a demanding client. She made me work late nights to meet deadlines for a company that didn't exist. She did this to keep me busy, to keep me feeling successful, to keep me from asking questions about our finances. I sat in the middle of that room, surrounded by the debris of my life, and I realized that every single moment of the last 6 years was a lie. Every dinner conversation about her boss was fiction. Every bonus she earned was just another credit card she maxed out. Every gift she bought me was purchased with debt that was now going to bury me. I heard the garage door open. It was 5:30 p.m. She was right on time. I heard her heels clicking on the hardwood floor of the hallway. She called out, "Honey, I'm home. You won't believe what the CEO said to me today." I didn't answer. She walked into the office and stopped dead in her tracks. She saw the foreclosure notice in my hand. She saw the mountain of opened letters. She saw the look in my eyes. For a moment, I thought she would cry. I thought she would apologize. I thought she would break down and tell me she was sick, that she needed help. But she didn't. She dropped her briefcase and her face went completely blank. It was a mask falling off. She looked at me with cold, dead eyes and said, "Well, I guess the vacation is over." I asked her why. I screamed at her, asking how she could do this to us. She shrugged. She literally shrugged. She said, "I liked the lifestyle, Arthur, and you were too simple to give it to me on a graphic designer's salary, so I made it happen." She said it as if she had done me a favor. She said, "We had a good run, didn't we? The trips were fun." I stood up and told her to get out. She laughed and said, "It's not your house anymore, remember?" She was right, but I still threw her out. I packed a bag and left that night. The aftermath has been a nightmare that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. We are filing for bankruptcy. My credit score is destroyed. I won't be able to rent an apartment for years. I'm living on my brother's couch. The police are involved because of the identity theft and fraud, but since we're married, it is incredibly complicated to prosecute. She is currently living with her parents, playing the victim, telling them I had a gambling addiction and I was trying to cover for him. Can you believe that? After everything, she is still lying? But the hardest part isn't the money. Money can be earned back eventually. The hardest part is looking back at my memories. I look at photos of us in Paris, smiling in front of the Eiffel Tower. I remember feeling so happy in that moment, thinking I was with my soulmate. But now I know that while I was smiling, she was mentally calculating how much credit limit was left on the Visa card she opened in my dad's name. I wasn't in love with a person. I was in love with a character she played. And now I have to figure out who I am, because the man I thought I was, the husband, the provider, the successful designer, died in that room along with her lies. I'm 34 years old, and I have nothing but a suitcase and the horrifying realization that you can sleep next to someone for 7 years and never really know them. I realized something yesterday talking to my lawyer. She never cheated on me with another man. She cheated on me with a fantasy, and that fantasy cost me my reality.